So here is our sample application. Now we will examine the request minimum attribute. So to check this attribute, first we need to run this application in more secured zone. So in the previous video you saw we ran this application in full trusted mode. Now I will show how you can change the security zone to intranet. So go to Solution Explorer, right click on top of the project, then choose Properties. In the left side tab you will have to select security. So here if you see, you should place check mark on enable click once security settings. So if you see by default this click once is not enabled, and at the same time you are seeing the application this presently in the full trusted mode. That's why I told previously we are running the application in full trusted mode. Full trust in the sense it has almost all the permissions derived from the administrator user account. Okay, now I will place a check mark here. Enable click once security settings. Then I will place a check mark. This is a partial trust application. Then okay, there are only two action defined here, predefined action. So we will test local intranet. Here if you see, these are all the permission sets. There are a lot of permission set. Okay, I'll go for local intranet. You can see local intranet has more permission than local internet. Internet. Internet doesn't have any permission for environment. That means it cannot read or even write to the environment variable. But if you see local intranet, then it has access to the environment. The environment variable. So to see what environment variable this local intranet can read or write, I'm going to Properties. So grant assemblies access to the following environment variable: username only read. So when we are running the application in local intranet mode, we have permission to read the username environment variable. There is one more set test. I will add that here, but I don't want to grant any permission for now. I'll just add that set test. Okay, now I'll click OK. That's all, we are done with the permission. So let's open program.cs. Now we know that this application zone we trick it to run as a local intranet application. The settings that you saw just now is for click once deployment, but we are using it for checking the security or just for studying this security and security actions. Okay, now we know that this application is a local intranet, treated like local intranet, and it has permission to read a username environment variable. It don't have permission to write to that username environment variable. We added a sec test environment variable, but still the application cannot read or write to that environment variable. Now let us see what happens if I put the request minimum security setting, and we will claim to read both the environment variable. First I will place to read the environment variable sec test. So first need to type assembly, because it is going to run in the assembly mode. That means this attribute is assembly level. That means these security actions are applied at assembly level. So after typing assembly, so I'm choosing environment permission. After this environment permission, I have to specify the security action, and you can see that in the IntelliSense itself. The security action is request minimum. So just use the security action enumeration, then choose request minimum. Only these three applicable for the assembly level. Others I will explain in a separate article and video. So first we will go with this request minimum. After that we have to define the action set. That means we know that at assembly level we are claiming for the permission, environment permission. Then security action, we are saying request minimum. That means minimum I need read access to username and environment variable. Okay, we know that we have access to the username environment variable. So if I compile and so I built it. Now let me try running it. If you see, the application is loaded, and I can even access the read username through the code. That means we know that when I click this button, it will use environment dot get system environment variable. Make a call to that function to get the system environment variable. Okay, now I'm closing this, and you are seeing two stuff now. See, I claimed for environment permission, specified action as a request minimum, and asked at least I need to read username environment variable. Request minimum is like that, kind of claiming for doing something. That action is specified here. We know that it's a claim for environment permission. So what it is that is specified here, environment variable name is username, and the kind of action we want to perform is read, and the security action for that read action is request minimum. That means while assembly is loading, the environment variable can be read. I mean the username, can I read the username? That kind of check is performed by this assembly, and if it knows it can, then the assembly will get loaded, and you saw that assembly get loaded. Also you saw we read that environment variable also. Let us see what happens if I claim something which is not yet granted, or okay. So we know that set test environment variable not granted for read or even write. Let's see what happens if we claim that permission. Okay, so now I am claiming for the set test environment variable. Since we don't have the permission, the assembly load will be prohibited. So I rebuilt the assembly. Now let's try loading this and see what happens. This is what happens. So what it is saying, error while trying to run project, could not load file or assembly. And then it's saying set test app version, culture, public key, blah blah. Then one of its different. Okay, you can see it clearly here. Failed to grant minimum permission request. So request minimum is that's what the request minimum is. So now we have two permissions here. To load this assembly, the minimum permissions are username and set test. Read access to that. If it is not that, then assembly will not get loaded. Okay. Now I will remove this, or instead of removing this, I will go ahead here, properties, environment permission. I will choose properties. Then I will provide a set test here and choose read access. That's all. Provided a read access to this. I'm clicking OK. Put a save all. Then do a complete rebuild. Okay. Now let's try running this. We know that we initially don't have permission to read the set test because we created this environment variable so that the zone, local internet zone, won't have this permission. So that's why I specified that in the application level. Also, let me go ahead here again. See, this icon got changed. I'll just place the cursor, just read this tooltip. The application will require elevated permission to run in the selected zone. So what is the elevated permission? Elevated permission is reading the set test. That's we are deviating from the default. The default for local internet zone is reading only the username, and we elevated to read one more environment variable. Okay. Now if I run, assembly will get loaded. Alright, I can now even read a set test environment variable. Okay, that's all on the request minimum. So before I closing the video, remember that the request minimum will try to satisfy the minimum request, security request, that needs to be satisfied before loading the assembly. If it is not satisfied, the assembly load will get prohibited. Okay, we will see rest of the security action in the next video. I'm closing it for now.